questions. So let's start maybe the woman there with the mask, then the man there, and then man there. So.
Hi, my name is Sadie, and this question is specifically for our MPs on the panel, Ms. Creasy and Ms. Huck. Okay. So my name's Sadie, and I'm a young person. I'm really concerned about climate change impacts that are happening around the world already. And what you said really resonated with me about a new vision for what we can stand up for. And I'm wondering if you and if Labour can really take a stand and say, we'll support a Green New Deal, we'll support a Green New Deal bill, which has been put forward by some of your colleagues, and also will you put an end, if you're elected, to licenses for oil and gas drilling? Thank you.
Brilliant. I think we'll take the two other questions now, and then we'll come to that question. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, where was I in 97? I was 1. My name is Mary Ojo. I studied my bachelor's and master's at Queen Mary, and I'm moving on to a new role in the Parliamentary Digital Service next month. My question, Dr. Butler made a comment about an opportunity for us to recapture a new generation with regards to New Labour, and I was wondering, what does that look like? Harry spoke a bit about that in terms of policy change. I'm wondering, what does that look like on a local level, for example, canvassing some of the ideas that Stella spoke about in terms of, the vigor and the energy that Tony Blair brought with his transformational leadership. Professor Eunice did the same thing. I'm wondering, like, specifically, what does that now look like in terms of winning the next election?
Okay, we'll take the question there, and then we'll come to you maybe after we've come. Take the question.
Hi, my name is Jay Revel. I'm a PhD student at the Uni of Liverpool. Now, the British public tends to lean towards social conservatism. And post-Brexit, the Conservatives' electoral strategy seems to be something of a culture war. So I'm just wondering how Labour can win the culture war.
Efficient question. And finally, because you did have his hand up, man there, and then we'll take 4.
Thanks very much. I just want to take a warning on the New Labour lost 5 million votes, because I think there's been some academic analysis on that. A number of those people died. Blair could do lots of things, but I'm not sure he could get the votes of the dead. I just wanted to ask about what the role of the party is here. So I know that Eunice, you wrote a lot about how New Labour was very sort of top-down in terms of the party and how we had to engage with members, but there's always this massive gap between members and the public, and we've seen what happens when we follow that conclusion forward and we take all the party apparatus away, as happened on the Corbyn years, and we ended up with a car crash of 2019.
Excellent. Right. So why don't we start with the Green New Deal for the 2 MPs, and then we'll move on to the other questions. So if I pass the microphone down, Rupa.
Yeah, thanks. We did propose a Green New Deal in our last manifesto, and that's kind of good quality jobs and things like retrofitting, a whole range of things. So yeah, we are, as far as I know, still signed up to a Green New Deal. I don't know if your Green New Deal is different to our Green New Deal, because I've met you at several things where you film me with an iPhone, but happy to look at your Green New Deal and make it marry up with our one.
I'm going to try and bring all the questions together, because actually they reflect a similar thing to me, because I've had you guys do this to me before. So you should already have a film of me talking about the Green New Deal and my concern that the debate in Parliament right now around climate change is very two-dimensional. It's about targets. It's about wind farms. It's not actually about one of the things that I think that the Green New Deal campaign at its best could do, which is a very positive social justice-led vision of what climate crisis action could be. But actually this is about inequality. It's not just about, do you have a wind farm and do you have a couple of solar panels on your house? But frankly, as a campaign organisation, and I say this with love, you will fail if all you keep doing is going to events and filming politicians. Because the power and the movement that we need to build, and David talked about a movement, which is the same question about the political parties, is how change happens. And one of the failures of New Labour was that it didn't transform the Labour Party from a machine into a movement. But we need a movement now. So I'm going to issue an open invitation to you guys, because in July I'm taking over my local shopping centre, the top floor of it, and we're turning it into a reuse, resell, repair track. We want to spend 1 month seeing if we can cut carbon and cut living costs in my local community. I have the 10th highest level of child poverty in the country in my community. People are broke, but they also care about the environment, and I want to bring those things together. Now, I'm rubbish at repairing things. Have you seen the clothes I make? Have you seen the rooms? I need people who can be part of that process of organising for it, bringing communities who don't normally engage in issues around climate change into that conversation. At its best, that's what the Labour movement could and should be, because it joins people up, that your vote is the start of the conversation, not the end about how you make change happen. And frankly, you can get as many videos as you want, but come and join me. Come and help me show that in a community with the levels of deprivation and inequality that I have, we can build a coalition of people fighting for climate justice and social justice together, and we'll have something different. And that's my answer to Eunice, because I've got a community where basically it's the bank of mum or dad that makes a difference. In this country now, you can inherit £1 million tax-free in property. But kids in my community will never get those chances to go to university, all those opportunities, because they will look at debt. But they won't also get the chance to do skills training. They won't also get the chance to start their own businesses. And some of them want to start their own businesses, repairing and reason. They're massively interested in these issues around sustainable living. The last New Labour government tried to direct what opportunity should be about. Actually, the next Labour government has got to have the confidence to trust in kids in communities like mine, that taking away that barrier that the Bank of Mum or Dad represents will liberate them to be the brilliant thing they could be. Because I represent God's own country in Walthamstow, right? Somewhere in my local community is the kid who could cure cancer. I absolutely believe that, if they were given that support. But that support cannot just be about one MP in a place that looks like Hogwarts gone wrong. It's got to be about a political movement that stands with them, works with them to address these issues, that has big radical ideas like, actually, can we spend a month cutting the carbon emission in our community and helping people struggling with the cost of living at the same time? Because frankly, that's how we show a difference is made. The biggest challenge we've got in politics right now isn't people shouting neoliberalism, isn't people talking about whether or not it's Boris Johnson or Keir Starmer. It's the fact that nobody thinks that change can happen at all. And if you're on the left, that's absolutely toxic. Because if you're on the right, you can fall back on the market and let the market make decisions. But if you're on the left, you need to mobilise people. And we need to mobilise from the grassroots up if we're going to have climate change, not just stand outside making videos and feeling proud of ourselves for it. So that's an open offer to you guys. Come to Walthamstow for July and help me, and let's show how change really happens. It's an open offer to you too, sir, because my meetings in Walthamstow, we never do longer than 90 minutes and there's always biscuits. That's how you make a party into a movement.
I'm going to suggest that for the rest of the questions, Stella, you've said you've covered, so we start with Eunice and work our way down and cover all of them, if that's okay.
Right, let's see if I remember well that question. So the question on the how to strike the balance between a top-down organization and essentially a completely chaotic, anarchic party that we saw between for the elections 2017 and 2019. Well, it's very hard. I think many party leaders have tried to reach that balance between leading a competent party that can win elections and being a democratic movement whereby all members participate in policy making and have a stake in the direction in which the party goes. There are no other lessons from other social democratic parties, I'm afraid, that offer a role model for a truly democratic, social democratic party, because they all tend to be rather top-down. But I think what Stella proposes is essentially the way forward. This was actually, incidentally, what Ed Miliband tried to do very timidly, which was to create that kind of movement politics, grassroots politics, getting involved with other organizations outside the party and trying to bring those organizations from civil society into the party. But that takes time. That takes time. It needs to be prioritized.
Oh, back to me. Okay. I remember culture wars and culture, and I think a role of the party in this, and lost votes between the different eras of New Labour. So culture wars, I mean, I think that we should be proud. We're the party that stands up for equality. So we shouldn't be boxed in by the Conservatives with their faux culture wars that they have created out of nowhere. And also some of these rather toxic policies that they're dreaming up on the hoof. Things like the privatisation of Channel 4 was not anywhere in their manifesto. This rubbish about a 10-year sentence for toppling a statue, which can be higher than a sentence for rape. I mean, those kind of things are quite revolting. I mean, I know that we're not trying to draw too much attention to them, because then that suddenly you're on their territory. But I mean, I feel that they're sort of trying to encroach on these things. I mean, it's their imagined thing, war on the woke, all that rubbish. And we should be proud that we're the party of equality. Again, we talked about civil partnerships that paved the way for gay marriage. Pretty much every equalities legislation this country's ever had, Equal Pay Act, all those things came from Labour governments. Culture just reminded me of Cool Britannia, which hasn't really been defined. I think Stella touched on it briefly, but again, that was a moment of optimism in 1997. I really don't like that D Ream song, but it was also the same era as we all hated it. Yeah, exactly. But it was the same era of Oasis versus Blur, wasn't it? And we were proud to use the Union Jack in a semi-ironic way without feeling we have to drape ourselves in it and have it in the background of every Zoom interview that we do. I mean, I literally had someone in the street say to me, and they're a lawyer, why is it that the Union Jack is so omnipresent in everything you guys do? Don't you remember the 70s? Don't you remember the NF? So again, for my generation, that can have sort of other connotations. But the way it was done in Britpop was kind of quite playful. And it's quite a nice logo, the red and white and blue tessellating over each other. So yeah, more Cool Britannia. Pop music is always better under Labour governments, is it not? If you think of the Beatles, you know, what they turned into, what they were at the beginning, so it's always better under Labour governments.
If we're pledging to deport Ed Sheeran.
Is that party policy, Stella?
I mean, I've got a list.
I don't know if that's party policy. I don't want, it's being filmed this, I don't want to say this.
At least just a hackney. You can have a hackney.
The 5 million votes lost, I mean, that's partly a feature of our electoral system. That is the rules. That is what we could get into a long thing about different systems of proportional representation. We can't do any of those until we win, and we have to win on this system, really. So yes, those votes were lost or whatever, but just basically the first past the post system. Actually, that was one of your questions, wasn't it? Progressive alliances. I personally think, I mean, I was enormously grateful. My original majority, so I had in 2015 a 4,000 Conservative majority to overturn. We went up plus 13% and it turned into 274. Neil Nerva remembers this. He came and campaigned for me. And then, in 2017, I did that many interviews on the Green outside Parliament when that election was called, because I was the one most likely to lose. And I kept saying, I'll still be here, stronger than ever, with a bigger majority. And I saw afterwards people tweeting, actually the woman who brought down Michael Fallon because of the knee gate, she was saying, this Rupa Huck on every network, she doesn't sound convincing, she doesn't sound convinced. Yet we increased that majority 50 times to 13,807, partly because the Greens stood down. I mean, I don't think they would have got that many thousands of votes because they used to get 1,000 every time. But when we thought it was 274, that was a really nice gesture of them. I think in general, it should be on a case-by-case basis. And I think people should have the opportunity to vote Labour, but they can go soft, the Lib Dems, on us and vice versa. We can have some sort of gentleman's agreement. Culture, the party does. Actually, counterintuitively to what everything's being said in this room, my point on optimism, 2017 probably came closest to capturing that in my political lifetime while I've been an elected politician. I've stood in everything since 2005. I was the Labour candidate in Chesham and Amersham, then on the council in 2010. So yeah, optimism. I don't know, we just shouldn't be someone who's managing decline and putting up with second-rate public services. So that optimism thing, I think you were alluding to, is kind of missing at the moment. And that's something that could be party directed, apart from, structures and things. I don't know, I don't massively comment on these things because it's kind of internal, but yes, could do better. Again, the way we choose our leader has been tinkered around with a lot of times.
I'll just pick up on two of the points. So first of all, on the social conservatism and the culture war. I mean, I think I think the best thing is not to fight it as a war. I mean, I don't think there's no winners there, and in particular, every time Labour engages in that, they increase the salience of the cultural issues that divide their base, or the voting groups that they need to win. So I think, and we have to remember that so many of the issues that are part of the culture war are not the issues that most voters up and down the country care about day to day. So they need to shift as much as possible onto some of those kind of really important bread and butter issues, whether it's cost of living, jobs, homes, children's futures. That's what you can unite, a majority in the country on, and that's what we need to increase in terms of salience if we want a more progressive country. And then briefly on kind of capturing the attention and the energy of a new generation. We did, at IPPR, we did a citizens engagement event up in Leeds last year with young people, trying to understand what would get higher voter turnout amongst younger people. And we thought we'd end up talking about democratic, we thought it was premised as a project on democratic reform. So we thought it was about votes to 16 or issues like that. In fact, all they were really interested in, the thing that came out really strongly, was they wanted a political choice on the table. They wanted political parties to engage in the issues that they really care about and offer meaningful solutions to the big problems that they are facing. So the environmental crisis was the thing that came up time and time and again. The political parties not really grappling with this fully. So I think the thing that we need to do is shift our politics so that we have a meaningful, positive vision about the future that addresses the issues that people really care about. And
just to finish us, Lise.
Yeah, thank you. So briefly on the question from the student, I think you're a student, about young people. I mean, I think optimistically, Labour support is still relatively strong amongst younger people, and I hope it stays that way. I invoke that in my remarks more to say that I think that, we can worry too much about the legacies of New Labour and what they mean and what they represent and be too defensive. And what I note amongst my students is really positive associations. Many of them are from immigrant families. Many of them immigrated in the 90s or the 2000s, and they have these very positive associations with the culture of that and what that represented about Britain. They also have positive associations, many of them came from their parents, about the way in which public institutions were supported and maintained during that period. So that's all to say that I think it's about kind of cultural legacies and to take heart from that. On regards to the culture war point, I sort of took the words out of my mouth. I don't think Labour should fight the culture war. I don't think culture wars can be won. I accept your point that by and large, this is not a country with particularly left-wing views, right? This is a country which we might call in some sense small c conservative around some sort of progressive issues, but it is a country that cares enormously about good institutions and good public institutions and good public services. And so I think a strong, coherent message that can rally around that can cut out a lot of the noise that is currently serving as a distraction in the culture wars.
Right, from a call to arms in Walthamstow to the cost of living crisis to Ed Sheeran. I think we've covered everything, really. The only thing that remains for me is to thank our fantastic panel.